let's meet the birds. We're going to start by cutting over to Peggy, who has Azula and Hope. Is Superman in the cage with them, or has he been separated out?
No, Superman has been separated out. When they came as a family, and we've had some spring hormone issues, and so Superman has been removed.
So you said that they came as a family. Were these, first of all, Peggy, I have to stop myself and remind our viewers that you can ask questions about Azula and Hope in the Q&A, and either our volunteers will answer it or they'll send the question to me and we'll talk about it right here in chat. So did these three come in from an aviary, or what's their story, and what do you mean when you say they're a family? Tell us about the three of them.
Well, the individual who surrendered them was no longer able to care for them due to health issues, and so decided the best thing for the birds was to surrender them to Mickaboo. So she had gotten the birds. They were all rescues that came to her, and Azula and Superman did the dirty deed, and
they were breeding.
After attack, they were breeding. Yes, and so apparently initially they attacked their eggs, and so of course none hatched, and then they successfully had Hope, which is the yellow bird. Hope is the yellow one, and Azula. Azul means blue in Spanish, so Azula is the mom, Hope's the baby, and she's about 60 days old now. And so that's how we.
Very young.
She's very young. So we're calling her she because Hope tends to be more of a girl name, but she's really too young to know.
Right.
So it's more like she, he. We can't tell yet.
Right.
But she is very, very active, very, very playful, and she's the one in the front. She got all ready for her debut today and took a bath, and about an hour ago she was soaking wet from the bathtub. So,
yeah, I can see how active she is, and she's hopping back and forth on perches and flying over to a swing. Baby Budgie on a swing, so cute.
Yes, they're very active. They also they like their greens. I make them almost like a salad every day, and what's really funny is they love their broccoli, and they'll pick all the little flowers off the broccoli, and they manage to get it not only all over the cage but all over the table that their cage is on. And I think Azula was an interior decorator in another life because she also likes to disconnect things and drag things all over the place.
Oh, nice. It's, she can work from home doing that, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
So we would want to adopt these two as a pair?
They could go as a pair, or Azula could go with another female, and with the baby, since we don't know what it is, it would be a case of, we would just need to figure out either, just make sure that hormone issues and all that stuff would be addressed should it turn out that she goes off and becomes a he or what, and that the potential adopter would just know that we don't know what gender she is.
Right. And I'll point out, and you've had experience with this, Peggy, but because budgies are such social birds, we only adopt them either as pairs or groups or into homes that have other budgies, because a single budgie by themselves is generally a very, very sad bird. So you mentioned that they're enjoying broccoli and some other greens. What else do they eat?
So they came in on a diet of both pellets and seed.
That's great.
And I've added in Nutri-And, which is a pellet, or it's like a cube-based diet that is commercially made and is a combination of pellets and seeds. And they've gone to that very, very well. They like a little bit of millet now and again, and we're working on that to see if we can get them, to come to your hand and that, because that's a great way. Most budgies will do almost anything for millet. So if you're patient, I put my hand in with the millet on, and the good thing is I've only had them now not even 3 weeks, and the hand doesn't bother them. They watch, they go back and forth, But it's not like they're terrified when the hand goes in. So the
That's really
previous,
great. I'm gonna interrupt for a second because they were
sure.
coming in from a situation where they weren't getting, you know, a ton of attention. Their owner wasn't able to care for them. So the fact that they're not afraid of hands is really great and bodes well for, you know, for them being to get on well with people.
Yes. And even Superman, he will also, he didn't, and the fact that I just took him out of the into his own cage about 4 days ago, I guess I've been forgiven because when I put the millet in, he hopped back and forth and back, and there was no panic involved. So I think they all have great potential, like, in terms of being hand tamed.
Awesome. Do we know about how old Azula and Superman are? Superman is also up for adoption. He's just not on the screen.
Correct. I would say they're young. Beyond that, we don't know. One came from up in one of the fire areas up in the North Bay, and the other one sounds like it may have been found in the area where the surrenderer had lived. And so we don't know, but from their behavior and everything, I would say, Haley, I would say they're young. Probably no more than a couple of years old.
Yeah, Azula is also very active, not quite as bouncy as Hope. Let's talk a little bit about living arrangements and the size of a cage for 2 budgies and the kinds of toys and perches you have in here.
So they have this cage is 18 by 18 by 30 inches long. When you select cages for budgies, you always want to get the biggest cage you can get and the longest, because you want them to fly, and budgies don't fly up and down, they fly sideways in their cage.
Hey, Peggy.
So this is
Peggy.
Yes.
Interrupting for a second. Is the long way the direction we're looking at, like the back of the cage, 30 inches away?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's 30
Perfect.
inches away. Yes. So this would be about the largest, or the size that I would put 2 in. It's starting to get cramped if there's 3 in here and they're very active.
So this is the
and
smallest
then
you would have 2 in.
I have had smaller cages, but I usually tend to use them for either, and these birds are still in quarantine too, let me point out. When they're in quarantine, sometimes I put them in a smaller cage if it looks like they may have health issues, because if you have to catch them to take them to a vet, it's easier to do it in a small cage.
Right.
Or if they have health issues and you have to medicate them, then they go in a smaller cage, because you're going to probably having to take them out twice a day to medicate. So, but otherwise, this would be my standard smaller cage. And then I do have flight cages that are larger that I have some in the other room.
So I want to touch on something that you mentioned. It's an important point that Mickaboo, we have a policy that when you're bringing new birds into a household that already has birds, that you quarantine them for 6 weeks. And that's because birds are really good at hiding illness. So even though we think that the birds are healthy, they might have something that's not showing. And we want to make sure that they don't communicate that illness to the existing birds in the household. At the end of 6 weeks, we generally have a pretty good sense.
Correct.
So I was going to ask you how you were handling the fact that Azula and Superman were breeding, and it sounds like the way to handle that in this case was to separate them. So that works out
yes.
pretty well.
Yeah. Usually there are other things that we do, to address hormone issues, but I actually caught them in the act. So a little more drastic measures were called for than just the other things that we would tend to do for hormones, which would be things like rearranging the cage, limiting the amount of sunlight, and shortening their days, making sure that, they're on a good mixed diet where they're not getting, too overweight, perhaps, because females who are overweight are more likely to lay eggs.
Yeah, if it's like there's abundant food, that tells the bird body time to breed.
Exactly.
Let's talk for a moment. I see that there's a number of perches in there, and they're very happy about leaping and flying back and forth between the perches. What other toys and stuff do you have for a happy budgie?
So these perches are a mix of different things, so that way their feet don't get tired of having everything, one size, like the traditional dowel. There is one dowel perch in the bottom here. The cage came with it, and I do tend to keep one on the bottom, so if they want to run, they have a way of hopping easily onto the food bowls. But otherwise, they're little budgie toys are inexpensive usually. And they're plastic. They're not as destructive, of course, as their larger parrot brethren. So there's things with little mirrors. There's things with rings. They have a little ball in the bottom that they play with, which is actually a cat toy that I liberated from my sister's cat one Christmas. They've got things that spin and turn, and they've got bells. And this thing here is a mirror that little bitty Hope loves. That's her favorite toy. And then they make toys out of anything else that's in here, which is their food and their bowls and their ladders and all that. So the one thing I do plan to add to the cage is maybe take out one of the things that they're not using so much and put in a set of rings for Hope, because when budgies are babies, they love the rings and they just climb in and out of them. It's so much fun to watch.
Oh, nice. So in our last minute or so, what else would you like to share that potential adopters might want to know about Hope and Azula?
Well, I think that they're very active. I think they're very friendly. I think they'll be easy to hand tame. And with little Hope, yes, being so young, she's got she or he has a lot of potential. And if she turns out to be a boy, you get them young like this, it's easier to teach them to talk. Now, granted, I've never had one talk, but if that's something you're interested in doing,
Right.
That's when you do it, is when they're young.
Right. That makes sense. And of course, there's no guarantee, regardless of age, that any bird will talk, but it's a good time to teach them. Peggy, thanks so much for sharing these two. They're just so cute. Really appreciate it.
They are. All budgies are cute.
Yeah, but these guys are especially cute. They're the cutest budgies I've seen all morning, at least until we get to all right.
Until we get to the next one.